So what is bigotry? Well, what are some so it's very interesting. So when I think about this idea of a bigot or what a bigot is, there is an archetype that shows up for me. And when I think about those images, I think about a bigot and I think about that archetype. Archie Bunker is the archetype that shows up for me. And so some of you may have watched that show growing up, or you may have seen reruns, or folks may not have ever heard of the show. But there was a show called All in the Family. And All in the Family was a sitcom, a situational comedy about a working class white guy and his family. And this particular character was very dogmatic, very opinionated, seemed to be undereducated, but overly opinionated. And so a lot of the show consisted of making fun of this particular character. But one of the things that happened that was surprising to the producer, Norman Lear, was the fact that this particular character caught on. And the reason that this character caught on was because he was playing two roles. One role was that of all the people who disagreed with him, who could see how zany and ludicrous his way of thinking was. But there were also people who actually agreed with his way of thinking and supported him. And so each week, both sides of that coin would join in watching this show called All in the Family. And so some of the things that determine, or some of the things that one might describe a bigot, were found in this particular show. And so Archie Bunker was the lead character, and he was very opinionated. He was very pro his group. He did not like anyone equally. And so in the changing times of the late 70s and into the 80s, he became the poster child, if you will, for bigotry. And so it's odd that this particular bigot had a tagline, or the show had a tagline that was attached to Archie Bunker, which was Archie Bunker, America's favorite bigot. And although he was very negatively opinionated about anyone that was different from him, there was something that people found endearing about this character. And I'm not sure if it was because people wanted to take care of this character, or people could see past the illusions that he was operating with, but he became America's favorite bigot. And so it really got me to thinking about what was it about that character that really drew people, outside of the fact that they either found him zany or they actually agreed with him. And it helped me to be able to work with bigots in my own time. Because Archie Bunker did have a sense of awareness, right? He actually did have a big heart. He actually did care about people, but the way that he wanted to care about them, or the way he got to know them, was very awkward, it was clumsy, and oftentimes not very well executed. And so that got me to thinking, because when I hear people talk about bigots, and I used to respond to bigots in very much the same way, I would say that bigots were suffering from ignorance. Anyone ever heard someone say that, right? That bigotry is a result of ignorance. But here it was that Archie Bunker, actually, if you talk to him or you watch the show, he had some informed ways of thinking about the world that were just a bit misguided. And so was it a lack of intelligence or lack of information? I would say that wasn't it. Because every time that I offer bigots the opportunity to be educated, because as a teacher, as an educator, that was my main mode of changing lives. And so I would go to the bigot, or encounter a bigot, and I would say, bigot, here are some facts, here are some statistics that refute what you're saying. And Archie Bunker also had someone in his life that would give him facts, that would give him information to refute the things that he was saying. And that was his son-in-law, Mike. And so Mike would say, Arch, I know you're thinking this way, but statistics and facts say this. And Archie would do much like the bigots that I encountered when I tried to give them information, is that they would either call names or they would dig in deeper. And finally, the bigots would get so deep into their stuff. And so in Archie's case, he would start calling Mike names. He'd call him Meathead because he said that Mike was dead from the neck up, right? And so that became like one of the jokes of the show. But in my encounter with bigots, what I found was something very interesting. That the more information I gave them, the more that they refuted that information and they dug in. Until finally they were so frustrated with the amount of information I was giving them that they would say, Andre, I don't care what you say. This is how I feel. Oh. Bigotry is not about what someone knows. It's not about a lack of information. It is not about being, what do people call it? Being unintellectual. It is not about those things. It is actually about how people feel. And so as a leader, as particularly a servant leader, how do I change how someone feels? The key point is that you don't. Right? But you certainly can lead them to feeling different. I don't know about you, but I've had friends that have had the blues. I'm not talking about clinical depression. That's a whole nother thing. But just the blues, feeling bad. So what do you do for people who are feeling bad? When you know your best friend calls you up, or you can hear it in their voice, or they sound like Eeyore from the Winnie the Pooh stories, right? Well, I don't know. It's okay. What do you do when you hear those people suffering from the blues? You try to cheer them up. How do you go about cheering them up? Some folks say, when I've talked about this in my sessions, some folks say, they bring them cookies or they bring them ice cream. They go out and do something. They encourage them to look at the bright side of things. They sit with them. They just listen. And I would say all of those are right in line with loving someone. When you have a friend that has the blues, when they're in this deep emotional pit that oftentimes people might think of, when they're in that place, the only thing that will move them is love. Some people say that the strongest emotion is fear. I reject that. I believe that the strongest emotion is love. Love not only conquers all, but it also covers all, right? So love. So wait a minute. We were just talking about bigots, and now you're talking about love, and you're telling me to help a bigot, not be a bigot, I have to love them? That's exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. To help a bigot change, you have to love them. Love the hell out of them. You've got to love them. What I'm not saying, right? So I'm sure that many of you have, just like I do, you have that aunt or that uncle that tells inappropriate jokes, right? The one that, your parents or you may even say, I don't want my kids around them because... ... That relative. So let's play the scenario out. So let's say you remove yourself and your children from that relative's life. Does the relative get better without you in their life? I would suggest no. And so when we talk about these bigots, what I'm talking about is I'm not telling you to take disrespect. I'm not telling you to put yourself in harm's way, either physically or emotionally. That's not what I'm suggesting. But I am suggesting that you have to tether yourself to those individuals. You see, I have two Great Danes, and I love them, and we have lots of fun. And sometimes the tether can be very long. But sometimes I need to make that tether very short. But I'm always connected. And one of the things that we oftentimes say as good people is that I am too good to be around that particular person, or they don't think like me, or they don't act like me, so I can't be around them. We say that. But we say that without telling the truth. And what's the truth? Here's the truth. The truth is, we don't hang around those bigoted people or those people that we say are hateful people, not because we feel like we're going to be infected by them, but we actually think that maybe they will say something that will infect us. Maybe they have a point. And so instead of waiting until that time comes, we say, we have to get out of here. So to help a bigot, you have to love them. Now, this is one thing I will tell you. I remember, I love Facebook and I hate Facebook at the same time, right? So I'm on Facebook and I get a ping from someone that I hadn't heard from in a long time. And Dolian Jordan hits me up. And sorry, I didn't mean to mention your first and last name. But so Dolian hits me up and he says, Andre Cohen? And I'm like, yeah, I'm excited to hear from Dolian. Haven't heard from him since high school. We were in algebra class together, and we clowned together. And so Dolian said, Fish Boy. And I said, yeah. See, my growing up in high school, we did everything in the kitchen. The kitchen was our meeting place. We did homework in the kitchen. I learned life lessons in the kitchen. And I ironed my clothes in the kitchen. And so I remember having the ironing board out one Thursday night, and the clothes were there, ready for school, iron them, press them. It was important to have creases in your jeans. Some of y'all don't know anything about that, but creases in your jeans were important. And so I'm preparing for school. My mom cooks catfish that evening, and it was delicious, especially if you add enough Frank's hot sauce on it, right? So we're eating dinner and having fun, talking and catching up on the day, preparing for the next day, and so the next day I hop in my clothes. I walked to school. School was probably about less than a mile away. So I walked to school, chatting with my friends, picking up people on the way. Get the first hour algebra class, and I have a problem. What is my problem? I smell like catfish. Why do I smell like catfish? Because I left my clothes in the kitchen. But I also had clothes in other parts of the house. And in my bedroom, I had clothes that I could have worn that didn't smell like catfish. And why did my clothes in my closet not smell like catfish? Because of the proximity, the distance between the kitchen and my closet. And so because my clothes the clothes I was wearing were in the kitchen while catfish was being cooked, I smelled like catfish in first hour algebra class. And I got labeled Fish Boy. Now, I know you're laughing at me, and you may think that that's a funny story, funny but true, sad and hurtful but true, right? But I want to know, what do the people around you smell like? Do they smell good like you? One thing that we know about great teachers is that they're able to replicate themselves. The information that they have, they're able to give that to their students. They're able to replicate who they are in their students in that particular subject matter. And so then the question goes to you. What are you replicating? Who around you is as good as you are? Sometimes we don't want to work with those bigoted people because we don't think that we actually can make a difference. We get confused and say that their bigotry must be stronger than my love. So what does that look like in the workplace? It looks like you can't talk to me like that here. You can't use that kind of language here. But I do want to see you tomorrow. I want to work with you tomorrow. I'm not going to cut you off. But we can work this thing out together. And so when we talk about bigotry and when we talk about helping bigots, it's about holding them accountable for what they say and how they feel and listening to them, because they may have a rationale that you don't necessarily understand as to why they feel the way they do. All human behavior is goal-directed, even misguided behavior or misdirected goals can be attributed to people's success and their failures. So with that, we'll go to this next session. And with that, we'll go to this next session. And with that, we'll go to this next section. And with that, we'll go to this next section. And with that, we'll go to this next section.